Remember, we know that Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump were once very close allies. Then Ron DeSantis decided to challenge him essentially in the Republican primary. He ended up losing, but there was certainly bad blood between the two. We've seen them sort of work towards warming their relationship, though we understand it's still a little icy and awkward between the two. But this comes as you have Laura Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, who has been in consideration to replace Senator Marco Rubio, who is Trump's Secretary of State pick. Now, Rubio is likely to be confirmed, so that seat, the Senate seat, would be vacant. So there is a scenario that could play out where you have Trump, appointing DeSantis, and DeSantis essentially appointing Laura Trump to hold that seat.
Welcome back to the programme. Now, another of Donald Trump's nominees has come under pressure. Pete Hegseth, who was in line to be the Defence Secretary, has been accused of drunken, irresponsible and predatory behaviour. And it seems that he could potentially be replaced by Trump's former adversary, Ron DeSantis. But you shouldn't count against Pete Hegseth's mother. Michael Schnell has been making calls to senators and doing broadcast interviews on her son's behalf.
Thank you for your belief in my son. We all believe in him. We really believe that he is not that man he was 7 years ago. I'm not that mother. And I hope people will hear that story today and the truth of that story. So the other thing I want to say is I am here to tell the truth. To tell the truth to the American people and tell the truth to the senators on the Hill, right, especially our female senators. I really hope that you will not listen to the media and that you will listen to Pete.
Well, that was Penelope Hegseth, Pete Hegseth's mum, campaigning on his behalf. Julia Manchester is political reporter at The Hill. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Carol. Thanks for having me.
I love the fact that he's got his mom out there batting for him. Is it going to be enough to keep Pete Hegseth in line to be the next defense secretary?
Well, we'll see. But remember, this is how his mom first got involved. The New York Times got a hold of an email she sent him years ago, essentially calling him, quote, an abuser of women. Now, she says she retracted that email 2 hours after she sent it and apologized, which is sort of an interesting explanation. But look, she was on Fox News, Fox and Friends, the show, the weekday version of the show he posted on the weekends earlier today, trying to defend her son. But in terms of whether it's enough, it's hard to say because it's not only that one allegation or the sexual misconduct allegations he is facing. There are also questions of whether he was drinking on the job, whether he was drinking before he went on air on Fox News, whether he was drinking at other organizations he worked at, whether he mismanaged funds for nonprofits he was also working at. So there are lots of questions, I think, over his leadership style and, what he has, his history in a number of these jobs. But, there's a saying in politics, Carol, and it goes, if you're explaining, you're not winning. And quite frankly, Pete Hegseth is doing a lot of explaining right now.
Yeah, and many people will have seen that video that's gone viral of him in an axe throwing competition when he almost seemed to take out one of the drummers that was behind the target. I mean, it's very difficult, obviously, to read into what's happening as Donald Trump draws up his team. But this suggestion that he could ditch his choice, Pete Hegseth, who certainly seems to have a huge cloud over his future, but to bring in Ron DeSantis.
It's an interesting turn of events, and it shows really how much the state of Florida has become the epicenter of Republican Party politics. Remember, we know that Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump were once very close allies. Then Ron DeSantis decided to challenge him essentially in the Republican primary. He ended up losing, but there was certainly bad blood between the two. We've seen them sort of work towards warming their relationship, though we understand it's still a little icy messy and awkward between the two. But this comes as you have Lara Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, who has been in consideration to replace Senator Marco Rubio, who is Trump's Secretary of State pick. Now, Rubio is likely to be confirmed, so that seat, the Senate seat, would be vacant. So there is this scenario that could play out where you have Trump, appointing DeSantis, and DeSantis essentially appointing Lara Trump to hold that seat. Now, that's just completely hypothetical. We don't know if either of those things are going to happen. But a lot of moving pieces in Florida politics right now. Remember, it's not just Ron DeSantis, who's a potential who would be a Florida figure serving in the Trump cabinet. You also have former Congressman Mike Waltz, who would serve as his national security advisor. So a lot of influence coming from that state this evening.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And of course, the incoming president wields a huge amount of power over who's going to be in his administration. But even someone with the power of Donald Trump does also need to get his appointees approved on Capitol Hill. And now we're hearing that Elon Musk, who seems to be there with his finger at every twist and turn of this, is going to be talking to Republican senators tomorrow.
Yes, that's about the government efficiency program, also known as DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, I should say. He will be leading that, Elon Musk, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, a former presidential candidate and entrepreneur. Essentially, that commission would work to advise the Office of Management and Budget, which is a part of the executive branch in the U.S., to cut down on government efficiency. It's gotten some support from some Democrats. Rahm Emanuel, the U.S. ambassador to Japan and former Chicago mayor, has said that Democrats should be open to the idea of the commission. Senator Bernie Sanders has said that he would welcome cuts to the Defense Department where necessary. But we do know that, practically speaking, Democrats are not in favor the same way Republicans are of these widespread cuts. So Elon Musk will certainly get a warm reception from Republicans on Capitol Hill tomorrow.
Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill. Great to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Sir, any questions? Real quick, any questions?
Sir, you have minutes. Mr. Hegseth, do you have a drinking problem?
Sir, why are you the man for this job?
Did you compare yourself to what Kevin on the meeting? Why did you decide to move on?
Sir, the reason the Holly meeting was canceled tomorrow.
That was scheduling issues. That's all.
Very strong message.
Cameras.
He met with Senator Thune just before coming into this large meeting with a number of congressmen at the Republican Study Committee, and he got overwhelming support, applause. Everybody's behind him. Most importantly, he spoke with President Trump again this morning. President Trump is 100% behind him, and I think you're going to see a process that's going to be smooth and operate as it should.
Is Mr. Hegseth still in there? Can you address?
Everybody had great meetings in the Senate today. Had a chance to talk to Leader Thune. Our founders are brilliant in this process of advising consent. It's been edifying and a wonderful process to go through and meet with senators and talk to them, especially members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, whose passion is the Defense Department, and our warfighters, to hear what they want to do to make sure that department is properly oriented for the threats of the world and make sure that we're putting the warfighters first. That's what Donald Trump asked me to do. Your job is to bring a warfighting ethos back to the Pentagon. Your job is to make sure that it's lethality, lethality, lethality. Everything else is gone. Everything else that distracts from that shouldn't be happening. That's the message I'm hearing from senators in that advise and consent process. It's been a wonderful process. As far as everything else, I had a chance to sit down with Megyn Kelly today for an hour. I refer you to that interview. She asked probably all the questions you guys would like to ask.